Okay, well, anyway, welcome to this week's Winning Through Group interview. We're theming this Winning Through Redundancy and Layoffs at 50 plus during the COVID crisis. So if you can just do a very quick intro of yourself. So firstly, Tanya.
Hi everybody, my name is Tanya Sesmanero and I'm a career and personal development coach. My company is Vida Coaching and I help people who are at a career crossroads find jobs that they love.
Okay, brilliant. Dave Watts.
Hello, I'm Dave Watts and I'm the host of the Redundancy podcast. It's a podcast that looks at the challenges of finding and staying in work as an older worker.
Okay, and Dave Cordell.
Yeah, hi, morning everybody. I'm Dave Cordell. I'm a career coach of 20 years. I work with people a bit like Tanya to help them find jobs that they love. I'm currently president of the Career Development Institute, our UK professional body. And one of the things I'm doing recently in terms of projects is running a career cafe on Facebook to support people through COVID.
Okay, brilliant. Catherine.
Hi, my name is Catherine Brown, and I am the founder of the 50/50 Project, which is a website about how to find fulfilling work, where I interview people about their career and journeys.
Brilliant. And last but not least, Amechi.
Hi there, everyone. My name's Amechi Udo. I'm a career transition coach, and I help professionals find successful careers.
Brilliant. Okay, so we got quite a bit. Well, we could talk about this for a few weeks, I think, obviously in the current climate, but we'll start off with what do you feel are the common themes? And when I say common themes, I'm talking perception and reality for the over 50s market affected by redundancy and layoffs. And obviously in the States and Canada, they tend to talk layoffs rather than redundancy. So we'll start with Dave Watts, because you're the redundancy podcast, and obviously you've been having people on your podcast from all around the globe. So I'm interested also in any particular differences between countries, how they're viewing things at the moment, Dave.
Well, I think we can take, and comfort is the wrong word, but understand that the issues that are in the UK are pretty much those that are faced across the world. I spoke to Professor Martin Hyde back in November 2019, and he confirmed that the challenges then faced by older workers were similar to those faced in Europe, US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. And a report by Aging Better, even then in late 2019, was suggesting that a third of 50 to 64-year-olds in the UK were out of work. And I don't see any real change. I suspect that employers will harden their attitude to older workers and see them as an easy target. And certainly for those people that I'm speaking to in many, many countries, that seems to be the case for just about all of them. That's the view they seem to take.
Well, that's very sad if that's the case. And Catherine, are you finding the same?
I'm not really talking to people about redundancies, but so I think this isn't my area of expertise. Sorry.
No, but you're talking to lots of people over 50 who are out of work and struggling to get back into work.
What I'm talking to people about, they often are in work, they're entrepreneurs, but I think so that what it comes down to, I think is going to happen is it's about creating your own opportunities.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And Dave, in your career, Dave Cordell, in your career cafe, what sort of, I haven't been able to sort of dip in as much as I'd like to, because I'm involved on another project at the moment, but what sort of questions are you getting from people who are affected by redundancy and layoffs, especially the older folk?
Yeah, I think it sort of picks up on what Dave and Catherine have said, that they are experiencing, I think, sort of personal sort of beliefs about, I'm never going to work again. And they are experiencing employers who are One of the big things is who are laying them off or inviting them back at lesser rates, so they're feeling undervalued. And I think the themes that have come out kind of link into what Catherine's been saying as well, in terms of they need to start, or they're realizing that they need to start being quite innovative and not so much thinking outside the box as creating a new box, because the box seems to have been broken. So I think it's a paradigm shift for people in that age group, particularly I think for people that have been in one organization for a very long time. Yes, the people I was speaking to some people in the airline industry yesterday who've been like 30, 40 years in their organizations, and they're being faced with either layoffs or significantly reduced wages, and it feels like their life has come to an end. I mean, it feels catastrophic to them. So I think there's a big mindset thing to help people to deal with and to help them to shift and move on.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks for that, Dave. And my background being in the travel industry years ago, I'm fully aware of the challenges of the travel industry, but the airline industry has been hit particularly hard. And Tanya, where you live, obviously you're virtually on the door of Heathrow. So, what sort of things are you coming across at the moment, especially with the older workers?
Well, I also, have talked to people in the airline industry, and a theme that came across was quite a sad one, actually, in that, somebody talked to me and said that they might have had their last flight, but didn't even realise it. So they didn't get that chance to sort of almost say goodbye to their team and everything like that, because, almost inevitably they were going to be laid off, and they've been working there for 30 years. So it was sadness. But on a happier note, because it's a bit doom and gloom, I wanted to say that I know two people over 50 who have recently secured, sort of high level jobs. So there is hope out there, and there are jobs available out there. But I think, as everybody's been saying, it's I don't know, it's persistence, it's networking, rather than sort of maybe traditional methods. It's that, thinking outside the box and trying to be innovative in the way that you find your jobs. And, particularly I think women over 50 are starting to create their own businesses. There's a lot of women going into starting up on their own, sort of older women, because it's harder to get a job, so they're finding new ways of getting employment.
Well, that's interesting in itself, because I'd not necessarily thought about that. Before we come to you, Mechi, I just asked Catherine on that score, in terms of the entrepreneurs that over 50s that you've been interviewing for your blog. Is there a sort of a balance between men and women, or is it fairly even?
I've probably focused more on women, because I think it's just even more challenging for women who have been out of the workforce and then they find them over 50, and it's how to restart your career, and you've lost your network. So it really is, I think, a really big challenge. And I think COVID is affecting women because they're often the carers, both for children, so younger women, and also for their parents. And I mean, I think that's why women are going to be forced to try and be creative about how they approach their career if they want to get back into the workforce.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Absolutely. And I'm actually, you're obviously a parent yourself as well. How have you been finding things, and what sort of, inquiries, or what sort of questions are you being asked at the moment, especially again the focus on the 50 plus people?
Thanks, Steve. For those who are 50 plus, one of the core questions is simply, what's the market like at the moment? They want to know, what are the chances, what are the opportunities, what's out there. Then they're typically looking at, what do I need to do? And naturally their focus is, is it okay that I've been with the company a long time? Will that work against me? To which my answer is often no. Why should it? It demonstrates loyalty, it demonstrates commitment, it demonstrates that you are likely to want to stay with another organisation and give your best. And that's how you need to present yourself, because I know very few companies that say, oh yes, we want a transient employee, please. You know, unless it's publicly been declared it's casual work.
Yeah.
You've got two groups, if you like. You've got one set who are very much understandably dealing with the challenge of loss of identity, loss of position, status, and quite understandably are grieving that, going through a grieving process.
And
then there's another set who are very much, actually, this is great. There are other things in my life now calling that I want to do, and a portfolio career may be just the thing for me, because I've arrived at that point where I don't want to be schlepping around and doing crazy stuff anymore.
yeah, now that's an interesting point, Amechi, and I'm sure you said that because you know I'm the champion of the portfolio career. But one of my great passions. But there has to be, it's like, we talk about paradigm shift, then maybe there has to be a paradigm shift for people to start thinking, especially when they're over 50, is the traditional one job type approach the right thing to do? Because it's going to get harder and harder, isn't it? If employers are really making it more difficult, and of course we know there's no age discrimination, don't we, folks? That sort of thing doesn't exist. So, as you say, people have to be more innovative, more creative in terms of how they start to earn a living. But obviously for people in that category, the thought of multiple income streams from a portfolio career, it could be quite frightening for a lot of people. I mean, what are your thoughts around that? I mean, Dave, on your podcast, have you Dave Watts, on your podcast, have you had many people who've been looking at portfolio careers?
I think a lot of people have been forced into portfolio careers. If I take my own circumstances, I think given my age, I'm fairly rare in that, unfortunately, I've been made redundant from my role 6 times during my working life. But the upside is I've always found a job afterwards. And it is possible, and older workers do so. And I think I've worked now for 14 different organizations during my working life. So I think that probably means I've had a portfolio career. That is unusual because most of my contemporaries have only worked for 1 or 2. But if you're 50 and older and you're looking at employment, I think it's not necessarily so much looking at a portfolio career. And yet, if you look at Catherine's blog, which is really interesting, and some of the people in there that have taken a particular decision to find fulfilling work and to do something entirely different, some very inspiring stories in there. I think what people who are 50 and older have to do is to use different tactics and strategies to find a job. Because people do find a job, it's going to be tough and it's going to be a long haul, but they can no longer do it in the old-fashioned way, which is I'm going to create a resume, CV, send it off and expect to get a job.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen anymore. That's long, long gone. And you mentioned, I think, Amici, those people who've been in the same employer for 30 odd years, they may not have done a CV or resume in all of that time. And they're going to have to find new ways and tactics to deal with it, to get a job. And that's what's got to change.
Yeah. And just out of interest, for those of you who are involved in outplacement, is anything happening in that world at the moment, or companies shying away from actually paying for people to depart their organisations? Because that's the impression I get. They're not actually particularly keen to pay for it.
It is a bit of everything, Steve. I do a lot of this work, and some organisations getting their heads up and saying, look, we need to support people as they make their exit. In some cases, we may even need to extend their program of support because of the unique set of circumstances we're experiencing. Others are, looking at scale. The challenge is actually we may need to let go of a lot of people, and we need to look at the investment we can make in order to make that possible, and also do it within our financial constraints. Some naturally are waiting and seeing, exploring what will the market do and how it will work, and then making their choices based on that. I mean, but there's no one path or one route that companies are taking. They're having to balance this with a number of other competing priorities, and a more unpredictable future than they probably experienced even post the global financial crisis.
Yes, well, that's something I was going to mention, how different that was. But before we come on to that,
I'll chip in on that.
As your involvement in the Career Development Institute, I know you're lobbying government. Do you feel that there's going to be an opportunity like there was however many years ago it was now, at the back end of the last recession, when government threw money at supporting unemployed professionals and executives, particularly older people? Because I was in that category then as well. Do you think that's going to happen? I know you say the Career Development Institute are lobbying at the moment, but what do you think is going to happen?
Well, if I can just pick on Amici's point as well, briefly on the outplacement, because I agree it's a very mixed bag from the point of view of what I'm hearing through outplacement organisations. The people they're talking to, from what I understand, are sort of holding back on things at the moment, but expecting to engage with providing that support towards the back end of the year. In terms of lobbying government, it's interesting, since I've been involved sort of at the board level with the Career Development Institute, I found out just how much lobbying is happening, and it's our chief executive, Jan Ellis, whose job it is to do that. And she has, over a number of years, built a lot of relationships, not just with ministers, because as we know, they come and go on a whim, but with the senior civil servants. And there's a lot happening with the CDI and other related organisations with government, pushing very strongly for funds to be provided to provide this sort of career support for all ages, not just for young people, which I think is where the focus traditionally has been. My understanding, and listen, I'm not involved directly with that, but my understanding is that government are very open to that, and that seems to be a very frustrating process, pushing the wheels of government along, as we all know, which is such a shame, really. But that's the way it is. I think, as an industry, this applies to all of us on the call here, and to all of the people that we support and work with, and that includes the older workers. What we've got to do is be out there actually letting people know that we are here and that our industry exists, because I did some survey, very limited sample, but amongst my network and people I've worked with, and people generally don't realise that career coaching exists for older people. And I think that's part of the challenge. Is we need to be out there shouting as widely as possible that we're here and we can help.
Yes, I agree with that, Dave. But as Tanya alluded to, for pre-recording this call, a lot of people out there maybe want career coaching, but in the current climate, they're not actually prepared to pay anything for it, which obviously is a big challenge. I mean, what do people feel about that in terms of how, as career coaches or as commentators, I'll call you Dave and Catherine, how we can change people's mindset? Because obviously we know the benefits that people will get.
I think it's, is that okay if I talk?
Yeah, go on, and then I'll tack something on the end of that.
Yeah, there is a lot of I think there's a wait and see attitude, rather like with the outplacements and the companies. A lot of people are having conversations, you know, with myself, but then sort of thinking, oh, well, I'll see if maybe if I apply for a few jobs, and if nothing happens with that, then maybe I'll come back. And the applying for a few jobs is often, you know, they don't really know what they want to do, but there's a sense of desperation of any job is better than no job. So I'll just get something, and then maybe at a later date, when I feel a bit more settled, I'll employ a career coach to help me find the perfect job. So there's a bit of that going on. But I think in terms of what we can do, I mean, I do a lot of just kind of sharing useful tips and videos and articles on social media. And it's just having lots of conversations and trying to help people as best we can. But at a certain point, obviously, we all have to make money. So there is kind of, you know, you need to kind of have those conversations with people and explain the benefits and show them the benefits that they're going to get from paying for it.
Yeah, sorry, Matt, you were going to say something.
Yeah, just very quickly, just going back to the career coaching for over 50s and government. The government's recognised over a number of years that one of the hardest groups to move through the Job Centre Plus process is those who are over 50. They've run a few pilot projects specifically to support the over 50s. And I personally participated in a few of these and seen the benefit, including people actually getting jobs, which is kind of part of the process, but also the fact of them getting together and supporting each other.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think that people need career coaching in and of itself. They need help in finding their next career, their next job, determining their next pathway. And ideally, they want to do that in a constructive and supportive environment, of which coaching is a part, but not the whole. And that is, you know, in essence, let's get into a group, let's help build our own networks, let's see how strong and capable we are, let's support each other in making progress, let's give each other a collective boot up the bum if it's required to kind of get on and make things happen. And let's also share information. And I saw the benefits of breaking that isolation, shattering the silence around the annoyance, the frustration, and also to challenge attitude. You know, you'd see one person, yeah, I'm ready, I'm going for it, I've got an interview lined up, this is what's happening. And another person going, oh, well, you know, I'll go for it, but, you know, that mindset made such a difference, being in the company of others who adopted a perspective of it is possible, let's do it, and their shared celebration.
Actually, yeah, we in our area, Berkshire, Buckinghamshire, we have some job clubs, some career coaching, career springboard, and I've sort of done some presentations with them and seen the benefit of people being together and meeting weekly. Because it can be a lonely place if you're, you know, just constantly, you've been made redundant, you're on your own, you're trying to find a job, and, you know, that mindset can begin to play havoc with the job search. So having that support can be a huge boost for people.
So, Catherine, your 50/50 project, where you're interviewing, I mean, you've interviewed some fascinating people, I must say. Where do you find them from?
Where do I find the people? It started out with friends and then recommendations, and now I'm approaching people. So I saw somebody on LinkedIn, I'll drop them a message. And I think what my learning for other people is that actually just ask people. People are really open, and start to follow people, cast your net widely. Because I think, as Dave said, there's a lot of information out there, but it's all over the place, and it's really hard to find it sometimes. And I think once you start talking to people, they kind of introduce you to another resource or another person, and it's just really, it's a lot of work. I mean, I think that's the challenge, is that it's not easy and it's not going to be handed to you.
Yeah, and you know, you sort of alluded to, a number of you, that most people are over 50 are almost certainly going to get their next job through some form of networking, and yet I find it remarkable how many more mature people, let's call them, and especially more senior people, aren't or they don't really have much of a presence on social media, especially LinkedIn. And I've talked at the same job club as Tanya a number of times over the years, and various other ones as well. And you say to people, well, okay, so, you know, let's talk about LinkedIn and the importance of an online brand, and you get this sort of vacant expression. So there's still, I mean, Dave Watts, do you find the same when the people you're interviewing, that this reluctance to embrace current technology?
Yes, those who have been successful and those that are successful have embraced technology and understand what to do with it. But it goes back to a point that I was trying to make earlier, that for those people who've been in only one or two organizations for the bulk of their working life, have probably not had to do this, and therefore they don't understand that the rules have changed, or what even the rules are. And once you understand the rules, that the rules have changed, then you can do something about it. And I think that's where career coaches can help, because they can help tease it out. A lot of it, I think as well, I think it was your point, Amici, was it's desperation. They're doing it right at the end of the process, which is, as we all know, the wrong place to be doing it. You need to be thinking ahead, deciding what your plan B is going to be, and then working on it for some time. But it's so easy if you're working in a corporate just to sit there and think, I'm indispensable, they'll never get rid of me. Look what the posters say, people are our greatest asset, until that moment that they're not, and it's goodbye, and are you still here? And that's the crunch point.
Yeah, absolutely. Amechi, I'm conscious that you have to leave us, so any final words from you, and we'll carry on for a few minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I'd simply say that for those who are over 50, self included, it is possible, and you know, there are different pathways and different options, and I really encourage you to get not necessarily super creative, but certainly to explore different avenues and be patient and gentle with yourself as you do it, because it's so easy to give yourself a hard time and to say, oh, you know, it's my age, it's my this, it's my that, instead of actually looking at it realistically and just saying, oh, this does take time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. And I know, Catherine, I remember when we had a chat a while back, this aspect of time is really important, because it's the same if you're going to start up a business. Obviously, you're not going to become a millionaire overnight. You know, for some people, the ramping up process can take months or even years. So, yes, I think very wise words there from Amechi. So, anybody else got any other thoughts in terms of best strategies? We talked about networking, we've talked about use of technology, we talked about talking to people in general. What other strategies do you think are going to be maybe the ones that are going to be different even from the last recession? Because there seems to be a difference.
I think, can I jump in there quickly?
Yeah, off you go, Dave. Sorry.
Sorry, Catherine. Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Amici said. You know, that educating people on how to network is absolutely crucial, and the value, as Dave said, of doing it up front rather than as a last minute thing. But I think for me, when I'm speaking with people, particularly in the over 50s group, and it links back to what Dave said, if they've been there for 20 or 30 or 40 years, they've never had to do a CV, they do what they do, and actually helping them to get in and really understand what their transferable skill set is. And most of their skills are transferable, but after 40 years, you kind of got it boxed in there, and this is the only place I can do it. Just helping people to understand the skills and the qualities they've got and the impact that they have, you can see people's confidence grow, and then they can start to realize that these are all transferable, and they can stop looking at particular industries, particular job titles, and expand their sort of thought process.
Yeah, thanks for that,
I
Dave.
think,
Catherine, yeah.
well, I think you were asking about coaching, but I think there's a real need for workshops, things like that, where you have a day or half a day. How do I do my LinkedIn profile? How do I tell my story? How do I do my elevator pitch? And just for people to start testing and to really help them, really concrete things.
Well, obviously, currently they're going to be virtual like this, but yes, I totally agree with you on that, Catherine. And this whole, well, like I'm trying to do with my Winning Through group on LinkedIn, it's a whole support network community. It's building that up. Okay, well, I think we're going to have to call it a day. So, any last thoughts from anyone?
If I've learned two things from across the world, from talking to people from the Far East to South America, two key points. Don't give up, ever. Just don't. Even though there are going to be bad days and dark days, keep on. And secondly, you've got to develop a plan. And that is a common theme, whichever country, whoever I speak to, get a plan and follow it. Adapt if necessary, but don't go in there without a plan.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I'll say one final thing, and that is for people over 50, they really can focus on their life skills rather than just thinking about their work skills. And it's often those life skills, all their 50 plus years of their life, which actually can make the difference. So on that note, I thank you all for your contribution, and maybe we'll reconvene in a few weeks when we see what the world is doing.
Great.
But,
Thank you.
thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Steve.
Bye-bye.
Okay.